Hello and welcome to episode 57 of the Rockies Now podcast. We are a Colorado Rockies podcast. Whether you're a Rockies fan or just a baseball person, you can follow us at Rockies Now on all of your favorite social media platforms: Facebook, X, Instagram, and Threads. Thanks for joining with us today. I'm your host, Steven. Co-host Tom is here. Tom, it's been, I think, a couple weeks since we last did one because I think we did
Mhm.
the series preview. But Tom, how are you been doing?
Pretty good. We have the weather in Chicago is starting to warm up here a little bit, so I know it's probably not as bad as nearly as bad as you guys are dealing with in Denver with some snow and such. But all in all, good. Just obviously the season is not as appeasing based on the record, but there's still positives, which we'll talk about later. So all in all, I'm good. And hey, I can tell you one thing: the Rockies are in some ways doing much a little bit better than my other favorite team. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, and the Marlins too. Don't forget the Marlins.
Well, yeah, we'll talk
Yeah,
about all of them later. But yes,
yeah,
correct. But the White Sox, they're around Chicago. They're on
yeah,
White Sox fandom. We are upset. I'm upset. But the one
yeah.
thing is, the Rockies. If it's comfort to Rockies fans, the Rockies are a better team than the White Sox.
Yeah, or at least have a better roster because now you just
Uh,
lost your
oh yeah, oh
one of
yeah.
your better players, Moncada, for the
Well,
year. So now your three-star players are out for the year, right?
well, three of our better players are hurt,
Players, yeah.
including our best player, Luis Roberts, going to be out for maybe 2 to 3 months.
Mm,
Moncada's 3 to 6 months, which I think he played his last game in a White Sox uniform the other day. And
yeah.
then Eloy Jimenez, it was so since 2019 when he debuted, they showed us that he's been injured 13 times. He's hit the IL 13 times in 5 years.
Yeah.
Sorry for if I'm yelling into the microphone for our listeners, but it's a team that's more frustrating than Rockies. Let me tell you that much right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're not here to let me gloat just yet. Let's go into something a little more positive right now.
Yeah, so we were starting off when we were in the I guess the in the room before we got into the podcast show tonight. Tom and I, we were just kind of relaying, what's been going on for the Rockies the first week or so of the season, first 2 weeks. And the record doesn't look good, but at least the Rockies have somewhat stayed competitive, especially in the recent week or two, especially at Coors Field. I mean, hats off to the starting rotation, man. I mean, the
Mhm.
rotation did an incredible job. And not to mention, like, I mean, you're in the series in Arizona and Chicago. The pitching is terrible. A lot of the starters could barely get out of the third or fourth inning. And you had to rely on guys on Peter Lambert, Jake Bird, Nick Mears. And at Coors Field, it was like the pitching was actually better. It was actually really, really good. The problem is that the bullpen had a couple times where it just was
Mhm.
having trouble ending the game, like in the opening day game. That was at first we were like so frustrated. It's just, oh my goodness, we just blew a what was it, like a 4-run lead or a 5-run lead,
Yeah.
and it was just incredibly frustrating because of course we did the recap together, but like my heart was like I was this close from having a heart attack, and I'm 23 years old. But then you have the second game, the Rockies were up and they were going to win that game. Then they kind of blew it late in the game again. And then game three, it was a close game. The Rockies could have won. It's just that they had missed opportunities offensively. And then the D-back series, one game one. That was a great game.
Mhm.
Kind of got close there in the ninth, but great game. Game two, again, another winnable game. The Rockies definitely could have won. And it's just that overall, the Rockies, I feel like the record, honestly, they should have swept the Rays, and they should have definitely maybe even swept the Diamondbacks, or at least won 2 out of 3. So you're talking about a team that might be close to 500 right now at this point if things went the Rockies' way. Now, of course, it didn't, but it's just been kind of unlucky for the Rockies. Yes, we know that Brendan Rodgers, Chris Bryant, especially, we'll talk about him very quickly, and then Nolan Jones, man, those are three guys that you need to, to be good in your lineup because you're relying guys on Charlie, who might be in his last year in a Rockies uniform or in baseball for that instance. Tovar, he's, you know, he's having a really good start, but again, he's probably going to have at some point a cooling off a little bit. Brenton Doyle, he's actually been doing pretty well to start the year offensively. So it's just like some of these guys in the lineup are just not clicking, and the offense isn't clicking. Um, and the pitching, however, in the series again, it was really, really impressive. It was good. Except the late part of the bullpen. So I feel like the Rockies record should be better than it is right now. But at the end of the day, you got to win those games. But again, it's been really tough for the Rockies because again, they've had so many opportunities to I guess have a better record and kind of have a better spot at the moment. You know.
Well, when I look at the struggles of individual players specifically, I think some of them are either pressing too much or trying to do too much, or they are just, I guess, letting or not letting, but the pressure is just getting to them. I'll give you an example. Over the offseason, deservedly so, everybody from MLB Network to various media outlets were all baseball media outlets were all talking about Nolan Jones as one of the rising stars. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many top 10 rising stars or breakout stars of this coming season. Everyone had basically, I would say everyone had him on there. And it's under, even with a guy as talented as he is and as mentally tough as he is, you're gonna hit speed bumps, you're gonna hit roadblocks to the point where your mental moxie is going to be tested. And the pressure, not just the pressure gets you, but when you get too nervous or you start trying to do too much, that's when you start making mistakes, and those mistakes take away on your mentality, your confidence. And when your confidence goes from here to here, it affects your play on defense and at the plate. So it's completely understandable what he's going through. Every guy who is looked at as a potential superstar to be is going to have those moments where they're really going to just have to learn to have a real strong short-term memory and just brush it off and move on. And I think it was and one of the great first steps of that was when Charlie Blackmon took him aside and showed him a video that he compiled of all the errors he had early in his career. Because remember, Chuck came into baseball with the Rockies as a center fielder before he moved to the corners.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so he had struggles, and I'm sure even if we go back, the legendary Todd Helton had struggles. Everybody did. Larry Walker, all those guys. Hell, I'm sure if we look at Nolan Arenado's rookie year, one of the greatest, probably the greatest defensive third baseman ever, I'm sure he had plenty of errors in his rookie year if we go back and look. So, and the flip side of that, KB, I don't want to say I feel bad. Like, obviously, there was the note about he's dealt with a lot of tough things from pressure from people. Look, we can all be mad at him. It's understandable given how much we're paying him, what he was brought here to be. Of course, we all need to understand. I hope we all understand that he's not going to be 2016 Chris Bryant. You and I have hearkened that many times on this podcast. Yeah. But he can still be somewhat productive. And I think I hope his back is not barking. I hope it's not, because he sat out one game because of it. But I don't know, maybe even a veteran as experienced as he is letting pressure get to him. Maybe he's just off to probably a really slow start. Maybe he'll catch on. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. We have to let this play out. But as we'll get into, there are still plenty of positives outside of the players struggling to be excited about with this team. Some really, especially some of the pitchers, not shockingly, but to a pleasant surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the errors too. The Rockies, they did commit a couple errors in the series against Arizona, but at the same time, the defense has been a lot better. Which I feel like again, we mentioned in the recaps, early in the season how the defense has been bad, but we've seen in years past where the defense in the first week is really bad, but then the second or third week it improves, and then it just is really good all season long, right? And I feel like that's for a lot of teams, right? You get off to a poor start defensively, and it happens, right? And so the defense has been a lot better, but you're still going to commit errors. I mean, almost every single night there's going to be an error in there. Usually, I mean, sometimes, especially when the Rockies had guys like Story, Arenado, LeMahieu, it was hard to get errors for the Rockies because that infield defense was so good. But errors are going to happen. But yeah, I mean, Nolan Jones, I'm not really worried about him. But I think you kind of illustrated there that Bud Black just said in this past series that he feels like Nolan is pressing a little bit too much because he has this big expectation of being that guy for the Rockies. But not only that, but I feel like last year somebody mentioned that Nolan Jones is a guy that usually gets off to a slow start. Remember, in spring training, last year, he was so bad that the Rockies didn't even put him on the roster, opening day roster, because he struggled so bad in spring training. He just struck out a lot, didn't look good, and then he got hot in Albuquerque, and then the Rockies called him up, and boom, he did really well, and I think he got called up in late May or something. But I there's just you got to feel bad for Nolan Jones, and then especially with Chris Bryant, like you said. Um, I think some of it has to do with, I, in my opinion, I think part of it has to do with the comments that he made back in spring training about the organization, and I think he wants to kind of right the ship, I guess, because I think a lot of people think that, oh, he doesn't care about the Rockies. He's just there for the money. Now, I'm sure the money was one of the reasons why he signed, but I don't think that's the main reason. That's my opinion. But I think for Chris, I think it's getting to his head because I think as a ball player, as him, I mean, this is the worst start he's ever had in his career, and it's got to be because it could be an injury he's not telling, but Black about. And you just touch on it on how he had that one game off because of his a back strain. It could be that. I pray that it's not because the Rockies. We need him to be healthy. We can't afford to have him out 3 years in a row, a majority of the season. We can't afford that. But it's just that you got to feel for him. But at the same time, though, he needs to be contributing to the roster, man. Because if he can't, there's a likelihood if he doesn't start performing well in the next week or two, he could get sent down to AAA. I don't know. The Rockies, they're not gonna cut him. I guarantee you, they're not gonna cut him because you can't cut that contract. You can't trade him because the Rockies, they would have to eat a bunch of money and they would have to pay for that. Yeah, it's a whole mess. But there's still time for KB to turn around. I mean, it's only like we've only played like 13 games this year, and there's over 150 games or 140 games, whatever it is, left in the year. So there's plenty of time to turn around. At least he's staying healthy and he's playing in games. It's just that you just hope that he's not injured. But anyways, it's just that you got to feel for KB. But at the same time, though, I understand why fans are frustrated because, again, he's got to play and he's got to play well because we're paying him a bunch of money. He's the highest paid player on the team, and his OPS is under – I don't even know. It was so bad. I didn't even remember. I'm not sure if you have the numbers on that, but it was just.
I keep going. I'll look it up.
But yeah, it's incredibly bad. Like really, really bad. Like this is. I mean, Anthony Rendon is. It's kind of funny, but like Anthony Rendon is also to a cold start. But even Bryce Harper, he had that like really cold stretch, but now he's starting to hit well and he's starting to wake up offensively. But it's tough because again, I'm a big KB fan, but at the same time, though, I understand why fans are frustrated and angry with KB, but. Again, there's time for him to turn around. You just hope that he can, and if he can do that, he's got to stay healthy. But
if you want to hear it, here's the slash line: 100, 234, 175, 409 OPS plus of 11 in 11 games.
Oh, that just made my I almost threw up in my mouth just hearing that. God. But
it's. I mean, how do I say this? I mean, it's 11 games. You sat out a couple. We have a long way to go. All we can do is just watch and see. I mean, and it's like you said, they can't eat the money. That it's too much money to DFA. It's too much money to trade unless you eat a large sum of it. I'm talking. When I say large, I'm talking about 80%. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's good that we are not a team with playoff expectations. Otherwise, we'd be in a little bit bigger trouble having someone like him hitting that poorly.
Yeah.
So we just have to kind of ride it out and just hope that he can figure things out. At the same time, again, there are positives, more positive things to talk about, but it's something that's obviously out there. We have to talk about it, and it's unfortunate that it's come to this point. But hopefully he can turn things around. We just gotta wait and see. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's got to change a little to his pregame routine. Maybe change the color of his bat. Mm-hmm. Go back to the why does he go back to the natural wood look? I like that look.
Yeah, like the natural one because I honestly like I don't know, for me I don't know if it's just like superstition or whatever, but I don't know. I just feel like a lot of players, they just do better with that bat. Is it just me or I don't know? I think that was the only colored bat he used in Chicago.
Yeah. At least that's all I remember. Yeah. That's all I remember him using.
Yeah, because in the 2 years that he's played, he's usually used the black bat, and he's, I want to see more of the traditional wood bat, but I don't know.
Ryan McMahon did switch from natural green to all black, and hey,
I want him to go back to the natural wood because that's when he was actually like good. I mean, I'm sorry, but I mean, Mac, he still has power. Listen, I'm not trying to say Mac stinks. No, he's actually probably our best player right now. I
Well,
mean,
Jeff, no, he's Jeff Houston pointed this out. I can't remember what game it was. Jeff Houston pointed
yeah,
this out. He didn't do what I think he should do, which is flatten the barrel path out a little bit.
yeah, he still
He,
has the
he
same
no, but
from last
he kind of shortened his swing up a little bit so he gets to
year.
the ball quicker. He doesn't have
Yeah,
a long swing,
yeah.
elongated swing, and it's working for him. I mean, he like right now
He
he
is
is
hitting
the best.
400 or something like that, right?
It's 413 I think last I checked.
Hmm.
And I mean, he's our best hitter right now. I'm glad he's off to the start. And like I said, if he continues the track, I'm gonna look to write an article about how I think he should be an all-star this year.
Yeah, and talking about articles, Tom is going to be coming out with an article really, really soon. So make sure you're watching us on our website. Just make sure, because I think the link should be on our Instagram page.
Mhm.
So check that out. We have articles coming up soon from Patrick and Gabe. So make sure you're staying tuned. We have we're live here on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. We have a comment here from Fezzy D on YouTube. He says, "Is it just me, or is there a negative narrative coming from local media, mainly radio in Denver? No in-depth analysis of the team at all. You guys actually give great insight. Thank you, thank you, Fuzzy D.
We're here
Yeah,
for
I
you.
mean,
We're all here. We're all here
yeah,
for you.
yeah, for sure. And I think we touched on this when we were talking about KB in spring training when that stuff was going on. But yeah, like I tend to agree with you, Fezzy, that there is some sort of negative view of the Rockies, and I think part of it too is because because here's another thing too. The Broncos, for instance, I mean, we're not a Broncos podcast, but the Broncos, they have not done well, right, in the last 7-8 years. The last time they've been one of the worst teams in football. Not to mention,
Mhm.
just recently they were ranked, what was it, the third worst roster in NFL, which is horrible. And now I do like Sean Payton as their head coach. I like that, but they have to do rebuild. And I feel like so for so many years they did not rebuild, which they should have done. Like after the Super Bowl, tear everything up, rebuild, or at least the year after they won the Super Bowl. I think it was it Trevor Simeon when he started, or a year or two later, whatever it was. They should have started rebuilding when they started seeing a losing season. They should have rebuilt. But anyways, all I have to say is a lot of people are more excited about the Broncos and whatever. And I think a lot of it has to do because, well, the Broncos have 3 championships and the Rockies have 0. I think that's what a lot of it has to do with the negativity around the Rockies and the rebuild. But at the same time, though, you do look at recent history. Okay, well, the Rockies, they've made the playoffs more recently than the Broncos in the last 6 or 7 years, right? 2017, 2018. But yeah, I think there's definitely a biasness against the Rockies, even in Denver, even the local fans, because I think there is a station. I'm not going to say the name, but there's a station that only does the 3 teams, not the Rockies, and I just feel like
Mhm.
that's kind of unfair. And listen, we won't go on this tonight, but we understand the ownership, we understand the team direction. So, like sometimes where it's heading or the team record. But at the same time, though, we're seeing improvement, and we know, well, 3-10 is still bad, Steven. I understand that, but I feel like for a lot of time, especially when Jeff Bridich was here, there was like no team direction. What are we doing? Are we rebuilding? Are we, competing? What are we doing? Ever since Bill Schmidt has taken the role of GM, we've kind of known, okay, I think we're rebuilding. Like 2022 was a weird year where we were like, okay, we got Chris Bryant. What are we doing? Then, and then last year was like that first year was like, okay, we're rebuilding. This year, same thing, we're rebuilding.
Mhm.
And now the Rockies front office are looking toward 2025, next year, 2026, 2027 for that time to like kind of like 2015 and 2016 for the Rockies. And I think Clint Hurdle, who I follow on social media, and he's a great follow on Instagram. He does a lot of great stuff. I think he posts stuff almost every single day. Great follow, former Rockies manager, awesome guy. But he was talking recently about how, you know, there's been a shift in focus in recent years for the Rockies. Like we need to fix this. We need to make sure
Mhm.
that we build a strong foundation, build a foundation of winning in the minor league system. And so, and what are you seeing with the minor league system right now? You're seeing like Fresno. I think Fresno is undefeated to start the minor league season. I
Mhm.
think Spokane also undefeated. Hartford, I think, is also undefeated. AAA, of course, Albuquerque. I think they're starting to struggle a little bit to start the year, but I mean, the roster isn't that great in Albuquerque because not a lot of the prospects are up there yet. But just yesterday or the day before, Hartford Yard Goats, excuse me, was named one of the best minor league rosters in minor
Mhm.
league baseball, and that's the Rockies. And I just feel like that's exciting because I feel like a lot of people say, well, there's no excitement about this team, that we're going to be forever horrible. Well, I mean, people actually said that in the mid 2000s when there was like, I mean, you did have Holiday, you did have Tulowitzki coming up, you did have some of these guys, but the Rockies were so bad for so long because before 2007, the last time they were in the playoffs was 95. So they were out of the playoffs for over 10 years. And so they were like, you know what? We're not making the playoffs ever again. We suck. Monfort, sell the team. And there was conversations like people wanted Monfort to sell the team all the way back in 2005 and 2004. But guess what? We went to the World Series with Dick Monfort. Now, I'm not saying Dick Monfort is a great owner. No, I'm not saying that. I think he should sell the team. But I don't think he's the worst owner in all of baseball. But again, I digress. But anyways, I just feel like there is a negativity around the Rockies, and I think Fezzi D is pointing this out. Sometimes the Rockies, they do deserve it to a standpoint if they make somewhat of a move that I don't agree with. Like for instance, the Ian Desmond signing and the Daniel Murphy signing. For those who remember, that just brings me back painful memories. But anyways, it just there's some moves, but at the same time though, I do agree with Fezzi D that there is a negative vibe against the Rockies in Denver, and it's really sad because. And I'll just quickly say this: the attendance at Coors Field has been down to start the year, the lowest it's ever been in franchise history, or one of the lowest in over 10 years. And it's kind of sad because just like, people think that boycotting will help. In my opinion, I don't think it necessarily helps because look what's going on in Oakland. People are boycotting the team, didn't help because, I don't know. It just, I mean, I do feel bad for the fans. I feel bad for the people in Oakland. It's just that I don't want to see the same situation in Colorado. You understand? Like, I just don't want to see that. And I just feel like in some aspects, boycotts don't work. And, but yeah, I agree with Fezzi D there.
Well, the comment on a boycott, it brings attention in some, depending what the point of view is, in a positive way in some stances, but also a negative way in some stances. It depends what point of view you're looking at it from. Take it from me, living in Chicago, where there's a major sports team in there's a sports team in basically every major sport. When you look at the media market around Chicago, there's a couple things that they like to talk about. Everyone's talking about the Bears because, again, it's unfortunate. The NFL is king. They roll the sport landscape. I mean, of course, even except for international, but in America, football is king. The NBA is right behind them, so a lot of people do talk about the Bulls. But unfortunately, when it comes to baseball, the talk of the town in baseball is always the Cubs. People say, "Oh, the White Sox are the second team. They're the little brother that can get knocked around," that kind of thing. So I can understand your frustration. I mean, I don't like the White Sox being the second team, but again, when you look at championship pedigree, both teams are tied at 3 championships apiece, and it took about over a century for the Cubs to win a World Series, but the White Sox were a little less than a century. But again, it's a long drop. But the point is, I can understand the frustration. But when you look at, good to go back to your comment about the regime change, it was something that had to be done, and there is somewhat of a plan, and there's actually work to be done over there. And again, we can be upset about the record. I know that for a fact. And people, again, I just looked it up. The Oakland A's now are 5-8, to many people's surprise. But trust me, that's not going to last for long. They're going to start tunneling a little bit, even though they got some guys like Brent Rooker's really talented, Erie Lopez is really talented. And I can't remember the name of that one pitcher they have. I can't remember his name, but it'll come to me probably later. But anyway, the point is, I can tell you there are teams that are a lot worse than the Colorado Rockies, and I understand we should get something. We as Rockies fans, we turn out, we love our team, we deserve better, and trust me, I still think better is on the rise. We just have to wait and see. And of course, Fezzi, I can understand what you're talking about the weather. It's tough to buy a ticket. Let me tell you a quick story. I'm not sure if I've talked about it on this podcast. I went to the Chicago White Sox home opener in 2018, and I kid you not, it light snowed twice during the game. Twice. Light snow was just a little bit of a light snow coming down there, and it was strange. You're sitting there thinking, this isn't baseball weather. I'm sure thinking in my head, some of the Hispanic players who are not used to this kind of weather, thinking, this is not baseball weather. Why is it this? So, and
what's
again,
this white stuff?
Yeah, exactly. What is this? I'm not used to seeing this stuff during baseball season. But again, I digress on that one. So I can understand, and I can remember. I think it was 2019 on my birthday, which is in late May. I remember seeing the Rockies. I believe it was 2019. They had a snow out on my birthday.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was the opening day against the Braves.
No,
Well,
it was no,
oh, you're talking
it
about
was
the Giants game?
no, it was probably. I think it was the Giants because it was in late
Yeah.
May. It was in
Okay.
late May.
Yeah, because I was thinking of a 2018 home opener because that home opener was actually snowing in Denver against the Braves, and I think a
Oh
lot of
boy.
Rockies fans will remember that. And even that, I remember I was coming home from high school, and I just remember watching a little bit of the highlights of the game because I think the Braves were like beating us pretty well. But I just remember looking at the attendance, and actually it was not a sellout. I mean, there was a lot of
Mhm.
people, but it wasn't a sellout. And so I think, again, I think a part of it might be the record, but part of it is the weather because again, I mean 58. Oh, well, okay. Yesterday, okay. Again, I live in Colorado. I live about an hour north of the ballpark. And yesterday was actually kind of cold, even though like my app said 58. It did not feel
Mhm.
like 58. It felt like more in the 40s, if not, it was really cold. It was windy too. So it's just
Mhm.
like nobody really wants to go to a game when you're freezing your butt off and your face is like frozen, and it's just like you don't want to go to those games, and it's just like, and also in the beginning of the year too, a lot of people are working, and it's during the middle of the week, and not to mention school is still not out, and college is still taking place. So again, it's it's natural. I mean, you was it there was a game and I forget what game it was, but like I think it was the Padres game, and usually Padres have sellouts, but the
Mhm.
other game recently, the game was there was a number of people there, but it wasn't a sellout. So I think the weather was a factor in the last couple series against the Rays and the Diamondbacks, but because I mean you look at the home opener on was it Thursday or Friday?
Thursday. Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday, and it was sold out.
No, Friday. No, Friday. Excuse me, Friday.
Friday,
Sorry.
yeah. I was thinking it was like Thursday, but it was not a 4-game series, a 3-game series. But yeah, Friday was sold out. It was beautiful. It was great to see. But then obviously as game went on, I could tell some people left probably because they had to go home, or either they just saw the game, the Rays take the lead, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not watching this," because I had some people say, "Yeah, I left the game
Should
early,
have
but why?"
stayed.
Yeah, and then like
Should have stayed.
yeah, it should have stayed because I had one guy, he said, "Yeah, I went to the game and I left like in the ninth inning." It's like, "Why didn't I stay?" So, I mean, the Rockies, I don't know, like they've had multiple walk-offs in their opening day history at Coors Field. So, again, next year, don't leave the ballpark until like the final out has been made. All right. So, but I understand why some people want to leave early
Mhm.
to get ahead of traffic because I understand that because traffic in Denver
Mhm.
is horrible, and I just say that from experience. But anyways, yeah, a good point from Fezzy D, and Fezzy D, thank you for your comment on YouTube. But yeah, I think he made some really good points about the weather and again the negativity, the negative vibes against the team, and again it's kind of I guess natural, especially with a 3-10 start. But again, I mean it's early in the season. And again, a lot of people are busy working or at school, so it's all part of it. It's nothing new really. So
Sorry about the late start to everybody. If anybody has a question or a comment, then
yeah,
feel free to post it in any comment section. We'll try to get to it because tonight we're just kind of having a little chit chat and
yeah,
looking to talk whatever you guys want to talk about. We'll talk about stuff. But real
yeah,
quick, to go back to one thing, I think something back to the positive stuff. Here's something from Drew Creasman. If you don't follow him on Twitter X, he is formerly works for DNVR. He's an excellent guy to follow. So anybody Rockies fans, be sure to follow him. Drew, always
yeah,
love hearing what you have to say about the Rockies. So here's some interesting thing. The last 6 starts for Colorado Rockies starting pitching. Again, I know opening day, Kyle Freeland. I know it was just a putrid start. Everybody wants to harken back to. I've taken some flack from some people saying, people have said Kyle Freeland's not a bad pitcher. I said, yes, he is. Just watch. I'm taking some flack for it. I'm taking some flack for it already. I'm telling you people, it's still early.
yeah,
Okay, but here's a couple of things. So the last couple starts for the Rockies. So here, Austin Gomber, 2 starts ago, not his most recent start. A start ago, he went 4 innings pitch, gave up 2 earned runs. Then Ryan Feltner, 6 innings pitch, only 1 earned run. Dakota Hudson, 6 innings pitch, 3 earned runs. Kyle Freeland, 5 innings pitch, 2 earned runs. Cal Quantrill, 6 innings pitch, 3 earned runs. And then Gomber yesterday, hold on one moment, let me make sure I get this right here. He went 6 innings pitch and 2 earned runs. 4 of those starts I just mentioned, quality starts, which by the way, in case anybody who doesn't know what's defined for a quality start, it's 6 innings pitched or more, allowing 3 earned runs or less. That's considered a quality start. So to be honest, that's encouraging. And again, that was for the homestand against 2 quality teams, the Diamondbacks and the Rays. So to be honest, again, the pitching in the series against the opening series against the Diamondbacks, and in some sense the Cubs series, not very good, but they're starting to get a hang of it. I mean, look at those 6 starts right there again at the homestead at Coors Field. That's something to be, I think, definitely look at as a positive.
Mhm.
And if we want to talk about the defense, Drew Creasman, again, thank you so much for the great things you post. The
Mhm.
Rockies at several positions around the diamond either have a Gold Glove winner or a Gold Glove finalist. So
Yeah.
again, again, defense is important. That includes pitching and defense in the field. So that could, if we can continue to keep that up, whether the player who is part of what I just mentioned is part of the future or not, it's still something to be proud of that the Rockies are putting an emphasis on defense because you can score. Because again, to win, you got to score runs, but you also got to stop your opponent from scoring runs.
Yeah. In 2007, when the Rockies went to the World Series, I think they were the best team in baseball, or at least in the National League in defense. And you go back to 2017, 2018, when the Rockies made the playoffs, they had a really good defense in the infield. We already talked about that. Um, Outfield was, I mean, your best outfielder during that time was defensive outfielder was Blackman, but
Mm,
the two other guys were, okay. I mean, they were fine defensively. Ian Desmond, I remember he made some mistakes. Tapia, of course, he was still kind of a rookie back then, but Tapia was not good defensively. Sorry, but
Horror.
he was
No.
horrible. But yeah, I mean, in order for a Rockies team to be good, you have to have good defense. And I think we mentioned this too in the recaps. And I think you mentioned it when we
Mm,
were playing the Diamondbacks in Arizona. But game 2? It was a much better game. It was like a 7-3 or 7-4 game. But yeah, I
mm,
mean, Tovar made multiple errors in that series, and that's just not Tovar. I mean,
mm.
the Rockies were playing very like poor defense, and I feel like a lot of those games should have been better. Or if not one, should have been better played if it had better defense. McMahon made some errors in that series. Like everybody on the roster, I felt like made errors, and so, but yeah, like the defense has been better. Um, but yeah, it just it sometimes it's not like like it's not all the pitching. And when you talk about Kyle Freeland, because we've kind of both gotten hit by flack from it from Rockies fans, but like people are like, well, we should DFA Freeland. Okay, who should be our next starting pitcher then? Give me like, and they say, well, Bauer. Well, nobody's going to sign Bauer. Sorry, but Major League Baseball will not allow him to sign with Major League
No.
team. And I guarantee you, almost there has to be some sort of you know, I guess there has to be some sort of like I guess a group or a community of MLB owners. I mean, I'm sure there is, but I'm sure all 30 teams have agreed. Nope, we're not signing Bauer. And that's pretty much set in stone. So the Rockies, you Freeland actually is arguably one of the best pitchers in Coors Field history, and he's actually had good numbers at Coors Field.
Mhm.
Last year, I think it was last year. I think Freeland had a better record in terms of ERA and just pitching numbers at Coors Field than he did on the road, which is kind of weird because you expect it to be on the road at sea level, right? No, he was actually better at Coors Field. So it's just like I just don't. I'm a Kyle Freeland guy, and yes, sometimes I was I was really frustrated on opening day in Arizona because it was just he was his command was off. But I will say this is that if you get rid of Freeland, what are you going to do? But also these same people are saying, well, we need pitching. They're the same people are saying, get rid of Freeland, get rid of Gomberg, get rid of our starting rotation. Okay, well, who's going to be your starting pitcher? Well, call up guys from AAA. Well, those guys in AAA, a lot of those guys are not even ready to be pitchers, or they're long reliever guys. John Curtis. We're not going to have him start a game 1 of a series. Are you kidding me? Like, sorry, but it's just like I don't know. It's frustrating, man. It's just like Freeland. It's just and it would pain me if Freeland were to leave and he would do well on another franchise because I think he could. Because again, you wouldn't have to pitch at Coors Field, but at the same time, though, it's just like we need pitchers. Any pitchers we can get, even though yes, it's been frustrating the first week or 2 of the season, but we need pitchers, and Freeland is a guy we need, and it doesn't make sense by DFA him after just 2 starts. It really doesn't. I mean, so it's whatever. Um, it just yeah, I just really yeah, I just feel like some of those people don't watch the games, because I've had some people say, well, uh, what about Kyle Quantrill? Why did we trade for him? I mean, the guy actually pitched really well in game 2, and I know he's not a strikeout guy, but he had 6 strikeouts against the Diamondbacks lineup, and that's, in my opinion, that's good, right? And so I don't know. It's just I
You
just
only
feel like
get
I feel like some of these fans they just don't watch the games. You know what I mean?
It's a lot easier said than done, let me tell you, for all you GMs who sit on your couch and watch the game from there. There's a lot more that goes into decision making, whether or not to cut a player, sign a player, trade a player, pick up
Yeah.
one off the waiver wire. There's a lot more that goes into it. Trust me. We
Mhm.
only see the outside going in, and I don't have personal experience in the inside. I've never worked in executive office, but
Mhm.
I read a lot. I learn about these things, and let me tell you, it's easier said than done. And let
Mhm.
me tell you, I just read the last 6 starts have been solid starts for the Rockies starting pitchers, and
Yeah.
we actually have a lot of great guys out of the bullpen. Victor Vodnik, a guy I've been high on, he hasn't given up an earned run yet.
Yeah.
Sure, and I know, of course, you and I talked about we believe Justin Lawrence could take over the closer role, and he is not exactly off to the best start. J Law, if you're watching this, trust me, we still have faith in you.
Mhm.
Just relax, you're fine. And, again, um, I still have faith in the guy. And again, Tyler Kinley, again, he got off to a rough start. He's come on strong in the last 2 appearances. Who's another one? Jalen Beeks has been, good, okay, good.
Nick Mears. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot Nick Mears.
Mhm.
He's been great.
Yeah.
Who is it? Another, no, not, I was trying to remember who else it was I was going to think of. But anyway, I think it's kind of shocking that I think more of the offenses experience struggles when I think it was going to be the reverse opposite. I thought the pitching was going to, the pitchers were going to struggle to start the season more, but
Yeah.
to me, the offense is still trying to find its way a little bit from top to bottom. There's only a couple guys who are succeeding, McMahon being the most notable one. Um, but again, there's still a lot to be positive. Like I said, the last 6 starts at home have been great. And I think the truth is, I'm not sure what the weather's gonna be like in Toronto, if they're gonna have the roof open or closed.
Mhm.
So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. So again, Toronto has again, even though they're currently, sorry, I don't think I have the standings still open. I think they're in either 4th or 5th place right now in the American League East,
Mhm.
but they're still a formidable team, including getting the MLB The Show 24 cover athlete playing first base, the son of a Hall of Famer. Uh, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not sure, I'm not sure if Gosman's pitching this series, so we'll have to,
Well, I'm gonna check on my MLB app right now just to see if he's pitching
I
or not.
I'm not sure. I think because I think he was having shoulder
Yeah.
problems, but I like him because again he's a Colorado guy. I
Mhm.
think it was Louisiana State. I think is where he went to college. Um, I would have loved to have him sign as a free agent with the Rockies. That was not going to happen. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But it should be a good series in Toronto. And again, like I said, there's still a lot of positive with the pitching staff starting to, again, especially Kyle Freeland starting to show better, more quality starts in the recent couple games. I think it's still something to be looked at as a positive, especially after the putrid first. I would call them putrid first 2 series in Arizona and Chicago.
So Kevin Gosman is actually pitching tomorrow.
Ooh, who's
Against
switching? Who's switching for us again? Is it
Ryan Feltner. Ryan Feltner.
that's
That's
right?
gonna be a good game.
Yeah,
I think
because
that's
right.
gonna be a good game. And then it will be 5:07 p.m. It'll be Mountain Time, so that would be 6:07 Central, and then 7:07 Eastern Time. And then Saturday, let me pull up Saturday
That
here.
would be Hudson versus
Francis. What's his
ooh,
first name?
it's not Jeff Francis.
Well, Jeff Francis is actually Canadian, for those who do not know. So I thought that's really cool. Bowden Francis. Okay, I think
Okay.
he's their 27-year-old pitcher. This year he's 0-2 with a 12.96 ERA. So I mean it's early in the season, but hey, maybe the Rockies can jump on that. But that's what I said yesterday about Tommy Henry, and the Rockies offense didn't do very well against him. So I
Mm-mm.
don't know. I'm not gonna say, hey, we're gonna win on Saturday because I just jinxed it. But yeah, so Hudson will pitch for us in game 2 against Francis, and then Sunday, I'm pulling up on my app here.
That should go back to Freeland, I believe,
Yeah, I think you're right. It'll be
unless they're doing a skip day and doing a bullpen
Yeah,
day.
it's 11:07. Excuse me, 11:37 Mountain Time. So that would be 1:37 Eastern Time. It will be Kyle
Mhm.
Freeland versus Jose Barrios.
Oh,
Um,
Jose Barrios. I remember
Barrios,
him.
yeah. So 2-0 with a 1.45 ERA for Barrios.
He is very
Pretty good.
talented. From
So
all those years I watched him play for the Twins, when he
yeah.
was facing the White Sox, he is very talented.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried for that game, but hey, I mean, it's baseball. You never know. I mean, the Rockies were able to win Game 1 against Zach Gallen this past week, and I thought
True.
that game was going to be, oh no, Gallen's pitching great, and we actually won that game. We took we took him out of fifth inning. That's another thing. The Rockies, I will say this, they've actually had good at bats to start the year. They've gotten a lot more walks. Montero's had better at
Mhm.
bats. Doyle's had better at bats. Tovar. He's still striking out, but I've seen much better at bats from him. So that's the thing too. Like one of the biggest things, and of course this is kind of like from Moneyball because in the scene where Billy Bean's talking to the A's players, get that pitcher out of the out of the game early, get him out of the fourth or fifth inning, get him out, use that bullpen, get rid of their bullpen, man. Like the Rockies, they need to have better at bats. They need to get like they need to get better at bats. They need to get walks. They need to get on base because again, the Rockies offense has been very inconsistent. It's been on and off because you'll have these games where it's like the Rockies score 1, 2, 3 runs. Then the other game they score like 9, 10, 11 runs,
Mhm.
right? Like last year, second half, it was very like the offense is kind of like last year, I feel like for the Rockies. It's just like very inconsistent. We'll see some hope. Like, hey, this offense could be really good. Then the next game, they get shut out, right? And I just feel like we're still seeing that. I just feel like we're seeing better at bats, and which is a good thing, which is a sign of improvement. Hey, progress, right? And so, um, we can build something off of that. But yeah, I just feel like if the Rockies want to, will do well in the not the race series, the Blue Jay series. Not only the Blue Jay series, but throughout the entire season, they have to have better bats. They have to walk more because I feel like the best teams in baseball, they get on base, they walk a lot, and the D-backs they get on base. And like I mentioned the other day in the recap game for the Rays the home opener, and I told you how the Rays offense, a lot of their hitters, they're extremely good at taking pitches. They know the zone extremely well. The Rockies, they have to do that because I just feel like a lot of these guys, I feel like a lot of the Rockies hitters go up to this, batter's box, they, get down in the count 0-2 early and then they just start swinging at everything, trying to get on base. It's just like they need to get better at bats and they need to get on base because I just feel like if they just do that, they're gonna have a much better offense and they can at least score a run because we've seen so many times where the Rockies have runners at second and third or bases loaded or first and second. Then, Chris Bryant gets out on a double play and the inning's over. It's just extremely frustrating. And we want to see runs, but the Rockies, they need to have better at bats. And I'm talking to not only talking to the young players, but I'm talking to like Chris Bryant, especially because there's been several times where he's, either struck out or gotten into a double play, which could have been a, a big thing, a big part of the game. I mean, you're talking about a chance to either tie the game or take the lead. So again, the Rockies they need better bats, and hopefully we see it in Toronto. But Toronto is a pitcher's friendly ballpark, so at least I think it is. And the weird thing too, because I mentioned it, I think was it yesterday or the day before, but the last time the Rockies played in Toronto was in 2013. And by the way, that was the last time they were in Toronto. Todd Helton was playing, so that's a fun fact for you all who are listening tonight. But I just thought that was kind of a fun fact there. But the Rockies, simply put, in this series against Toronto, if they want to, mix, do something crazy, just get on base, get some walks, and because I don't think they're going to hit a lot of home runs, especially against this pitching staff for the Blue Jays. But just be crazy on the base pass, steal some bases. And I feel like the Rockies, they've been a little bit more aggressive on the bases this year. And we saw that in spring training. Keep doing that. Um, However, there's sometimes a part of me that's like, oh, I just don't want one of these guys to come up and like they tear their UCL or their hamstring by running to second base because I remember it was in spring training of 2021 when Rogers was running to second or was trying to steal a base and he's like hurt his hamstring or something like that. But I just don't want to see that to happen. But the Rockies, they have speed on their roster. It's just that they need to steal some bases and get some walks. Play small ball. Um, Especially with some of the guys that they have on their team, just play small ball. And I think that can go a long way and at least keep the games close. And that's what the Rockies have done so far. So even though the record is 3-10, the Rockies they just they need to play better. A small ball and just be a little bit more competitive.
Well, yeah, they've been as we talked about in our pre-show meeting, they have been somewhat competitive. I mean, to me, they've only had 2 major blowout losses, which was opening day and then game 2 in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I think a big turning point for them was that game 3 in Chicago, where they lost 9-8, but they had a big comeback and actually tied the game at 8. I think they were down. Well, I can't remember
It was
off what.
8-2 or something.
Right, they were down 8-2, came back and tied
Yeah.
it, lost 9-8, and since then, they've either won or they've had a lot of close games. A 10-7 win, an 8-6 loss, a 3-2 loss, 7-5 win, 2-3 loss, and a 5-3 loss, and a 3-2 loss and a 5-3 loss. So since then they've been competitive. I think you could say maybe since that victory they've sparked like, hey, we can make big comebacks. We can be competitive here. And again, since then, only a 2-6 record. I mean, sorry, 2-4 record. Pardon me, 2-4 record in 6 games. But it's still something to be positive. I mean, again, to be positive about that, all your losses were by less than 3 runs. So it's a good thing to be proud of, I would think, especially going into a tough stretch. Not only do they have to take Toronto this weekend in Toronto, but they got to play the Phillies in Philadelphia on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then, of course, we come back home to play Seattle, who are not exactly setting the world on fire, but they're still a formidable team. I just hope we don't have to see Castillo in that series. You probably will, but hopefully we don't. But here's a couple of things that I wanted to be talked about when it comes to statistics. Right now, when you talk about walks, they are currently in a two-way tie for 18th with 39 walks. When it comes to a big stat of OPS, they are 15th in baseball, so right in the middle. And also in slugging, on base percentage, and average, they are also in the middle of the pack. Slugging, they're currently ranked 14th. On base percentage, they're 15th in all of baseball. And then batting average, they are actually 13th. And we'll talk here real quick. 2 stats I'd like to highlight as well. Home runs, they are not exactly great. They're tied for 17th. And then we talk about scoring runs. They have scored a grand total of 54 runs, which puts them in a tie for 17th. So again, to be honest, for a team that is with the record that they have and is projected to be, people are saying is projected to have as bad a record as they're projected to have, being in the middle of the pack right there, that's something I think to look as a positive thing. Bad record, but you're still putting up middle of the road offensive numbers. That's still pretty good, I would say. And again, we didn't even talk about pitching yet, but it's still something I would say to look at in a positive note, and something that should boast confidence, not just among the team, but among us as fans going for the rest of the season. And don't forget, maybe we'll see a prospect promotion too. Remember, the big ones to keep an eye on in AAA are Drew Romo and Jordan Beck. I was about to say, yeah, correctly. He's actually doing really well right now. So again, keep in mind, there's still a possibility we could trade Jacob Stallings or Elias Diaz. Hopefully not Elias Diaz. Let him play the rest of the year with us, and we could see Drew Romo coming up. And that's my prospect to hope that we could see towards the end of the year. But we'll have to wait and see. So again, the record speaks for itself. It's going to speak for itself at the end of the season. But when you look behind the record and take a look at what is actually being put forth on the field, there's still, as I mentioned, those pitching stats in the last 6 starts that I've talked about. And again, didn't even get to the bullpen just yet. I only talked about a couple of guys. And again, the offense is still, I think, putting up in spite of some guys miserably struggling. Being in the middle of the road is not that bad, to be honest with you, in my opinion. I mean, anyone feel free to comment and disagree with me if you want.
I will say this because, again, I like following Clint Hurdle on social media, especially Instagram, because he puts out great content. But he was saying this in a recent video that, they've had meetings this year as a team, as a Rockies team, that, we want to forget last year. But at the same time, though, this year, we hate to say it, but this year is probably going to be another rough year. But guess what? We can be that team that could be a thorn in the side of another team, right? That is a rock in their shoe that because the last year the Rockies were that, talk about the Giants series at Coors Field. You remember that series where, we got the walk off, Chase Anderson was throwing a no hitter, and that was a great game. And the Rockies, they were competitive at the end of the season, kind of like what they're doing right now. And, that series was huge because if the Giants win that series against the Rockies, the Giants could have made the wild card spot. And so for the Rockies to kind of be that team, they have to beat some of those potential playoff teams either early in the season or late, because you want to play spoilers. And I think the Rockies, they want to do that because obviously, you kind of can hang your hat on that at the end of the season. I think for the Rockies this year, again, we've talked about it before. We talked about it multiple times in our recap so far to start the year. But this year is not going to be a fun year for a lot of us. This is going to be another bad year, probably another 100 loss season. But what are some of the things that we can hang our hats on? Well, I think like what Clint Hurdle said, I think this team can definitely be a team that is a thorn in the side of another team that can really, mess things up for them, and that they can learn something from that. But not only that, but you have a farm system that is improving. You also have young players to be excited about, like again, Nolan Jones, even though he's off to a cold start. Brenton Doyle, Tovar, who the Rockies signed to that extension, and he's going to be the Rocky shortstop for many years to come. And he's only going to get better. He already has two home runs to start the year. Not to mention he's hitting over 300. Where last year, like I mentioned in our recaps, Tovar was on to a bad start last year. He was striking out everywhere. He just couldn't hit, couldn't find a way to get on base. And I just feel like we're seeing small improvements in the roster. And I just feel like the Rockies, they're slowly, I don't know, like again, they're still going to be a bad team, but they're slowly starting to see some pieces here of, okay, well, now we can build around these players. And for the extension for Tovar, that's a sign that, hey, we want to build around the core for this young Rockies team, Tovar, Doyle, Jones, etc. And so at least the Rockies, they kind of know, okay, we're gonna build around Tovar, Doyle, Jones. So again, it's it's very frustrating because the last few games, it's just like, man, I don't want to watch another 100 loss team again. It just stinks. But at the same time, though, this is a rebuild. That's what happens when you go through a rebuild. And the Rockies, with the situation that they left, with Jeff Bridich, when he left the organization, it really hurt the organization instead of help the organization. It really, hurt us in a lot of ways because of the Aaron Auto trade, and not to mention some of the contracts that were handed out because the Rockies were still paying for Ian Desmond in 2021, I believe. And they were also still, so in 2021, I think they were still paying for Ian Desmond and Daniel Murphy. And I just feel like with the previous guy at the GM role, he didn't do a good job at all. And so I feel like the Rockies had to clean up that mess going into 2022, 2023, rebuilding the farm system, getting solid draft picks, getting good draft positioning. And I don't think the Rockies were necessarily trying to lose on purpose last year just to get a better draft pick, because now you have the draft lottery, which means that even if you are the worst team in baseball, you're not guaranteed to get the number one pick. Like last year, the A's were the worst team in baseball. They got, was it the fourth pick, right? We're number 3 and the A's are number 4. Yeah. So even if the Rockies, let's just say, are the worst team in baseball this year, we're not guaranteed to get the number one pick. And I mean, there's a chance that we could get it, but the last 2 years that we've had the draft lottery, the worst teams have not gotten the number one pick. So um, there you have it. I mean, I think the Pittsburgh Pirates, they were the second worst or the third worst, but they got the first round pick 2 years ago, or a year or two ago. But yeah, so I just think that for the Rockies, just continue to rebuild. And again, it's going to be a painful process. But I mean, look at the Orioles, man. They had, what was it, 4 or 5 years of 100 loss baseball. A lot of fans didn't even want to show up to the ballpark. Of course, they were wanting the ownership to sell, and of course, eventually did. But even last year with the previous ownership, they were so excited. The Orioles won over 100 games last year, and last year was I think a less exciting roster than they have this year. And so it's just like, even the Orioles, they were so good last year, even with everything that was going on with their organization. And I think with the rebuild that happened over there, it was necessary. And I think when you go through a process like this, it's necessary. And I think the Rockies, are kind of seeing that, especially since they saw in their own division with the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks had they had that 1 or 2 year rebuild where they lost over 100 games in 2021. They were the worst team in baseball next to the Orioles. And look at the Diamondbacks now. They have a super scary lineup and one of the best offenses in baseball, really good pitching. I feel like over the last couple of years, Merrill Kelly and Zach Gallen have just become one of the best, two of some of the best starting pitchers in baseball, right? And it's just, they're almost unhittable, even at Coors Field. They're nasty. So the Rockies, they just need to follow up that plan, and of course, it might not go exactly like what the Orioles and the Diamondbacks did, or what they're doing, and how long it will be. Because I personally believe it might be a little bit longer for the Rockies, because again, it's harder to win at Coors Field at Mile High, and you have to deal with the pitching and the altitude. But I do think that the Rockies, I think they will be able to turn this around if everything goes right. If they have the prospects, which I think they do, I'm looking at, again, we've talked about this last year, going into this year. We're looking at a 2025, 2026 year to where the Rockies can turn this thing around and become a wild card contending team. And that's if the prospects are ready and they're already up here. And I think we're going to see that later this year, because I think, Drew Goodman, Rockies TV broadcaster, did a podcast during spring training talking about how, he's talked with, Chris Forbes, the Rockies farm director, how they're looking at the end of the season. They already know that they're going to trade off a lot of these players, and that they're going to call up some of these prospects like Jordan Beck, Drew Romo. And so you're looking at, 2025, 2026 to be that year for the Rockies. So again, another rough year, like we talked about many times before, and we're going to probably talk about it 100 times more moving on into the regular season. But again, there's hope on the horizon. It's just that we have to be patient. And for me personally, I'm not the most patient person in the world, but I'm willing to wait and see what this team can do in the future. I'd rather lose now and win in the future than to put everything all in, try to win this year, because you can't win with the National League West division, especially with this year. The Rockies had either, in my opinion, they either have to find a window in the National League West in the next few years, or either they have to relocate to a different division. So,
well, the relocation could be coming in the future, but that's a whole
Yeah.
separate discussion. Whether depending on how baseball relocates to certain franchises, first they got to deal with the stadium situations, and then deal about expansion. Then they can do realignment. That's a conversation for about, I would say, another 5 to 10 years, because in Manfred's tenure, they got to settle those stadium situations first, and then worry about expansion. And like I said, then you can worry about realignment. But the thing is, you talk about the draft thing real quick. Yeah. Even when you had the second worst, it was the second or the third worst record last year, like the Pittsburgh Pirates, they end up with the 9th pick. Or if you had the worst record of baseball, like the Oakland A's, you still end up with a 4th pick. So even if you have the worst one, the worst record in baseball, it doesn't guarantee you anymore the number 1 draft pick, which I think is the best way to go about it, because like I said, a lot of teams were purposely trying to do that to get it. And I think that's just wrong, because you're basically trying to make yourself as non-competitive as possible, just so you think you get the best player in the draft, but only that just gets you selection of the entire field, which is a whole separate discussion. But the Orioles and Diamondbacks are great examples of rebuilds done right. It's not necessarily being absolutely terrible on purpose. It's just not fielding a non-competitive team so you can have a chance to try and build. But it's also not just having the right people in your development staff and all your minor league coaching staffs to mentor those players, but it's finding the right guys. And teams, especially I like the Orioles, not to say the Diamondbacks haven't done a good job, because Torey Lovullo is an excellent manager, but Brandon Hyde is a fantastic manager. I think, he's a protege of Buck Showalter and Joe Madden. So he learned from two of the best managers of the last couple decades. And I just because again, let me just rattle off here. 2018, which was Buck Showalter's last year as manager. And of course, Manny Machado's final year before they traded him to the Dodgers. And then of course he went to the Padres. And going on 2018, 47 and 115, then 54 and 108, 25 and 35 in the pandemic 2020 season, and then 52 and 110 in 2021. Then 2022, 83 and 79. And then this past year, they got 101 wins, 101 and 61. And right now they're 7 and 4. And there's a good chance. Again, I have them winning that division this year. There's a very good chance. And again, they just promoted, Matt Holliday's son, Jackson Holliday, who has the sky is the limit for that young man. So we'll have to wait and see how he does. But it's just something you can see. Again, the Rockies, I don't think are going to have more than, knock on wood there, I don't think they'll have 3 consecutive 100-loss seasons, and I hope I'm right. But again, if you have a plan and you execute that plan and you properly make adjustments along the way, because you're going to have to make adjustments in developing a team from within, whether it's injuries, players who don't perform just to what you expected of them, trades, etc. Bill Schmidt is going to part with some of these guys. But again, like I said, I do believe the young core is starting to develop with some more reinforcements on the way, whether it's Amador, Beck, Romo, maybe Willie McGyver. He's another catcher. I have some hopes for him, not high hopes, I would say, because, but I would say I've still got some hopes for the guy. And again, even Sterling, guys like lower ranked prospects like Sterling Thompson, Cole Keurig, or if you look at Yankiel Fernandez, or another pitcher I think could be really useless, I really like is Evan Justice, who's right now in Albuquerque. there's still a lot. There's a lot. The Rockies have options to choose from. Oh, I didn't even mention Chase Dollander, who had a fan, who's off to a great start with Spokane. So, like I said, it's a process that can be strenuous and difficult to do. Again, I do another example of a rebuild going on. Look what happened to the White Sox. That was a rebuild that miserably failed, but that's a whole separate discussion as to why that failed. But if you can put together the right young core and supplement with the right veterans, Chris Bryant could be one of those veterans to finish off a winning team. They could just put together the next Rockies contender, and let's hope it lasts for a number of years, maybe even longer than 5 years.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, there's still a lot to look forward to. Again, this is a season that we all know is going to be tough to watch. But the one thing I can say is from my perspective, having again gone through a rebuild in recent years with my other team, the years from which they were losing a lot and just trying to find their identity and find their core players to build a contender around. I just enjoy watching because of my love of baseball, my love of the franchise, my love of the team, and just try to, I guess, make a couple of decent. I mean, because one memory you can think of to remember, you can look back on when the Rockies are a contender. Remember that home run by that walk-off grand slam by Ryan McMahon on opening day
Yeah.
2024? You look back at moments like that and say,
Yeah.
they were down, they came back, they were leading, lost the lead to a tie, and look, they won on a walk-off. So just remember moments like that you can make memories out of when you look back, and who knows, maybe it's a memory we can look back upon when the Rockies win their first ever World Series. You never know.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well,
Life,
yeah.
life is crazy, and
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
and miracles do happen too. I mean, no
Yeah.
one expected 2007 to happen, but hey,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in 2007, even the Rockies, I think somebody pointed this out, even 2007, the attendance was down until, of course, later in the season when everyone was going to the ballpark because of the crazy run the Rockies were on. But, like, you never know what's going to happen. And now, of course, with the division and with the roster construction, the way the Rockies are right now, it's going to be another tough year, like you said, we both said. But, hey, it's that year, and you can still have fun watching baseball. And I know it's, for a lot of us, it's kind of difficult, and it's horrible to watch when your team blows a lead or you're just not playing well. Your team doesn't show up at the ballpark, but still, there's ways where you can enjoy yourself watching the game, and it can be just one player. Like, hey, I can't wait till this player shows up, or when he gets into the box because he's been hitting 2 for 3, or he's 2 for 2 or 3 for 3, and yeah, just find those small joys, I guess, this year, especially if you're in a rebuild year. Like, again, for me, it's been more looking at the farm system and looking at, some of the younger players for me. And again, I want to be excited for Chris Bryant, but, we have to wait and see if he can actually, get hot, which I think there's still a chance he can do that. It just right now, it's just extremely tough for him. But it just, like you said, it can still be fun watching a team, even though it's going to be another rough year. You can still find ways to have fun and watch baseball. And because, of course, if you're a baseball fan, you're still going to have, tough moments, but, hey, hang in there and have fun. And that's what I'm going to be doing this year. And I think that's what we're all going to be doing. But yeah, it just, just hang in there, and better baseball's on the way. Hopefully, fingers crossed, because I think the Rockies, they know what they want to do, and I think they want to build the next contending team. And here's the thing that stinks too, because you look at 2017, 2018, the Rockies had a roster that was going to be contending for multiple years. They had a window of contention, and of course, with the Nolan Arenado trade that happened, and everything that happened with Daniel Murphy signing and DJ LeMahieu and Adam Ottavino. In some ways, I would consider that almost worse than a lot of the signings that the Rockies have made in their franchise. Because here's the thing: DJ LeMahieu, I think, won or he was runner up to the 2019 American League MVP award. I know he was a finalist, but we lost DJ. Who was an excellent second baseman. And I feel like the Rockies, they definitely could have re-signed him, but Jeff Bridich didn't want to. And he was more focused on getting Daniel Murphy, who was more injury prone. And that was not one of the greatest signings, not to mention sign him to that ridiculous contract. Then Ian Desmond, who at first, when in 2017, we were like, oh, okay, Ian Desmond, that's kind of good. That was and I think that was actually the first big free agent signing Jeff Bridich did, because of course he was the GM. I think his first year was like 2015, I think. And that was really his first big addition to the club because the Rockies had just recently gotten Bud Black as their manager. And so at first we were like, oh, Ian Desmond, okay, we kind of like this. I mean, he's had good history with the Nationals, with the Rangers. He was an all-star. And of course he gets injured in his first year. And it's just like, the Rockies, they've had their problems, but I just feel like it stinks because again, the Rockies, they could have had a longer window of contention if it wasn't if Jeff Bridich would have not have made some of those moves that he did, and of course with Arenado and Bridich not having a good relationship at all. Not to mention there were times where quote Arenado and Bridich were yelling at each other multiple times. They hated each other. They hated each other. I think that's pretty much a fact. And not to mention Jeff Bridich, even I want to say he didn't. I thought I heard somewhere that him and Story also didn't have a good relationship. Like Bridich didn't have hardly any good relationship with some of the players, like especially some of the big players. And it's just like, man, I wish the Rockies had a longer window of contention. And of course, now and that window shut just recently, but now they have to reopen that window. And I think it's coming soon. But again, it's been through a lot of hard work through the draft, and I think it's going to be coming soon. But yeah. And I guess Lux, he kind of points out in the comments here that he says he's still kind of upsetting that we didn't build around Arenado and Story. Should have built up the farm while signing better hitters. Exactly. I agree with that. Bill Schmidt would have been way better than Bridich. I agree 100% with that comment because I feel like the Rockies, like it would have been perfect if we would have gotten Chris Bryant with Arenado and Story. Can you imagine? Because I mean, that would have been even going into 2019 and the Rockies were kind of like a World Series contending team if you add Chris Bryant to that mix. And if you keep DJ LeMahieu and Adam Ottavino, like you're talking about a World Series type of contending team. Instead of the Rockies, they get rid of DJ, they get rid of Otto. And I think a part of it too might have been contract money. I'm not sure if the Rock and I think some of it has to do with the extension for Nolan because the Rockies wanted to extend Nolan and that happened. And of course that didn't work out very well because the relationship between Arenado and Bridich again was pretty bad. Again, it was really, really bad. But yeah, it just I just feel like we had so many opportunities during that time to keep the window open longer. It just with Jeff Bridich, it closed when it really shouldn't have,
I would say, Lux, to answer your last comment, why Charlie Blackmon stayed with Bridich. He didn't choose to stay with Bridich. It's a difference in personalities and a strong, hot. Because I'm not trying to knock anyone's personality. Charlie Blackmon's your simple, go about your regular business kind of guy. Yeah. He's not. And then Nolan Arenado is just from my understanding, he's just a very strong, huge. I don't want to say alpha male, but just a very. I would say uber competitive, strong alpha male-ish personality. And again, when you look at Jeff Bridich, not only was he not favored by the players, but he was not very favored he didn't have a lot of friends in the media. Because when you're a general manager and you want to appeal to certain parts of, you want to appeal a little bit as best as you can to a fan base or also the media, you have to have allies. And I think who said this? I think it was either, I think it was Patrick Saunders who said this, or actually, I think it was Patrick Saunders who said that he was often chauvinistic and standoffish against the media at times, quite frequently. I mean, I remember, I think it was an interview from his office during COVID. He would sit like this.
Yeah. Yep. Perfect. Yep.
And he would just kind of go, and his response would be, yeah, excuse me. He would go, oh yeah, blah blah blah. I'm just saying blah because we're just gonna go about our business and do this kind of thing. Whereas Bill Schmidt is more kind of to the point, actually answer your question.
I want to say there's a video of that on YouTube. I think it's on the Rockies YouTube channel because like again during COVID they were kind of like doing the special thing of like Rockies classic or Rockies history, and I think because of the pandemic, they had to do they did an opening day online where they did like different moments of opening day in Rockies history. Mm-hmm. I think there is a video of Jeff Bridich doing that. I think with you doing that, I laughed because I was just like, I think I've seen that video, and it just like really and it's hilarious.
But and also Lux, to answer your question about 1920, just a lot went wrong. The team was. Not to go along with certain players dysfunctional relationship with the front office. Just on the field, even the great Bud Black was having trouble keeping things together. And I don't blame him for that. A lot of things are clicking. I went to 2 games in 2019, one in Cincinnati, another in St. Louis, and both nights the pitching was just atrocious, whereas the offense was doing its best to try and keep the team in the game. It's just a lot of things went wrong in the field. The whole team wasn't clicking at the same time. And when you have a somewhat dysfunctional relationship with the front office and the clubhouse, it can lead to issues on the field. So it was just a core that, unfortunately, as good and talented as it was, just wasn't, how do I say this? Just wasn't built to endure too much adversity, I guess is probably the right way to put it. And so,
Yeah.
and when your star player wants a divorce, you have to unfortunately oblige his wishes. And I don't blame Nolan. I really can't. I can't knock Nolan Arenado for wanting out. And and like I said, I will stand by this. They made a pretty good deal for him. And again, people say, well, they sent 50 million. Well, in order to close out a deal, something like that, you have to kind of, in some sense, send money, but they still saved $150 million that they could allocate in other things.
Yeah.
And they got two guys that they still have that can be used, that can be, I would say, contributors on whether it's just some capacity on the future with Gomber and Montero. So we just have to wait and see how they do this year. This is the make or break year, I think, for Montero and Gomber.
Yeah.
I think can be a bottom of the rotation starter moving forward. But again, it's it's in the past. I think, like as you pointed out, we do have a better choice in the seat as the general manager. And you're right. The only guy who liked Jeff Bridich was Dick Monfort, because of course he hired him. So or actually I should say he promoted him. He promoted him because when O'Dowd, when Dan O'Dowd left, he promoted Jeff Bridich.
Yeah. And what was, I forget, what was Brich's first role? Was he? Well, he was a draft coordinator, wasn't he? Like he had something to do with the draft.
Go ahead. I'll look it up. I know he's an Ivy League graduate from Ivy League Law School.
I want to say Bridich was involved with something. I think he was either. I think he was a scout, if I remember correctly, because I think he was either he was a scout or either he was a part of the draft committee or draft.
I don't think he was a scout because he's a lawyer by trade.
Okay, I might be wrong there.
Well, go figure. Go figure. He's a Harvard grad.
Yeah.
Nothing against Harvard, but it's just it's a atypical kind of thing.
Yeah.
December 2004, he was promoted after Dan O'Dowd resigned after following the 2014 season.
Yeah.
He was a senior director of player development.
Okay, player development. Okay.
That was his role before he moved on to the general manager's position.
Yeah.
Succeeding the only general manager to put together a World Series team in Rockies history. Who I do like listening to I do enjoy Dan O'Dowd's takes on MLB Network.
Sure. The nickname is Dealing Dan because he made a lot of trades, and like he would just make trades constantly. Again, I think I listened to Park Adjusted podcast with Mark Knutson and Manny Wandawa. They do an excellent job. Sometimes they don't do a whole lot of podcasts, like we do, or like a lot of the big Rockies, companies, or like fan pages do, like or Purple Road does, whatever. But they've talked about Dan O'Dowd multiple times on their podcast, how he was, and it's still to this day, his nickname is Dealing Dan because he made so many trades, and some of them, and I think that's what he wanted. I mean, he would trade guys out, and that's what he did, and some of them worked, some of them didn't, but it's again, just the Rockies, they have to find out their opportunities, and again, I feel like we're kind of getting to the Nolan Arenado trade all over again. But anyways,
well, I mean, it was a divorce that just was
it was bound to happen.
It was inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I mean, it's part of baseball. I mean, you look at Goldschmidt with Arizona. I mean, Arizona fans were so upset with the Diamondbacks for trading him to St. Louis, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And
now you got Christian Walker.
There you go. I mean, and people thought, I remember, because here's the thing too. Christian Walker was already in his like later 20s when they got him, and people were like, "Who is this guy?" Like, he was he was with the Orioles, and he didn't have any good success with the Orioles. The Orioles actually got rid of him for basically nothing, and a lot of D-backs fans were so upset. And now look at him. I mean, he's an all-star type of first baseman for Arizona. I mean, Christian Walker, he destroys us every time we play him. But Lux has a question. Who was the GM who traded Tulo? And it was Jeff Bridich. Jeff Bridich actually was the one that traded Tulo.
That was one of his first trades.
Yeah, and I'll stand by this, but I believe that now there's a couple times Bridich made some decent trades, especially the German Marquez trade. That was a really good trade. But there were other trades that he didn't do so well. And I think the Tula trade was not the greatest, in my opinion, because we got Jose Reyes, which is kind of like, who? Like, why did we get Jose Reyes when we have Trevor Story? And I think he was either AA or AAA. Of course, we didn't really know how good Trevor Story was until the following year. But then we got, we did get Jeff Hoffman, who was the number one pitching prospect for the Orioles at the time. And, he's now doing very well in Philadelphia. Happy for him. But then we got, what was it, Miguel Castro, I think.
Yep.
And now he's actually with the Diamondbacks, right? He's there in the bullpen. I want to say that's the same
No,
guy.
it might be a different guy. It might be a different guy, actually.
Yeah, it might be a different guy. But anyways, they got Miguel Castro. I think that's his name, or it might have been somebody else. I forget. But anyways, those were, I think, the 3 or 4 players that the Rockies got. And, at first it was like, oh, okay, that's not really a bad trade. But then it's like with the way that things worked out, Jose Reyes, with whatever happened, of course, people know what happened with Jose Reyes. Pretty bad. And that's why we got Trevor Story up in 2016. Jeff Hoffman, he had some good starts, good times with the Rockies. Then he had some really bad starts. Like, he just couldn't click. And of course, there was that recent article coming out just recently how when under Jeff Breich's tenure, the Rockies didn't have a analytics department. Now the Rockies do have an analytics department. That's another thing too, is like Jeff Breich really, I feel like they should have done a much better job in terms of analytics, because again, like I think what he said was like, yeah, in Colorado, we didn't really have an analytics department. And it's just like, oh boy, that's not a good look. But now with Jeff Breich out, with Bill Schmidt in, the Rockies, I think now have 12 people now working for the 12 or 14 people working in the analytics department. And I think some of the people that they've gotten in their analytics department have been from other teams like the Dodgers, the Rays, the Twins, the Nationals. So now I do think that one of the people that was leading the analytics department left this year during spring training. I forget her name. I think it was a lady, but anyways, it's just a bunch of stuff that happened with Jeff Bridich. And again, we've talked about it before, but in my opinion, he was not the greatest GM in Rockies history by the imagination. But just going back memory lane with Jeff Bridich, and it's just like, man, I'm glad that he's not our GM anymore. But so I guess to wrap things up for tonight, again, just to letting you guys know, we're gonna do updates, I guess, every 2 to 3 weeks or so, just kind of give you guys some updates, what's going on with the Rockies and some MLB news, that sort of thing. Just kind of give you guys an update what's going on. I think our next episode will be on, I think we're thinking about the 18th, which is an off day, which we'll probably do, or the 26th, which is the next off day. So again, we're going to do these every 2 to 3 weeks, and we're going to, again, we didn't really want this to be, we're going to kind of keep the podcast about an hour, maybe even under, depending on what the topics are, whatever. But honestly, like, we've had a fun time talking tonight about different things. We have some people in the comments with Fezzy D and Lux. So thank you two guys for listening in and commenting on tonight's podcast. But again, make sure you're staying tuned to our Rockies recaps. We do those after every single game. So make sure you're tuned in, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you follow us on social media, because we actually post the lineups, final scores, everything, Rockies news, everything. So make sure you're following us over there on Instagram, Twitter, Threads. We do everything over there, and we do a pretty good job of that. And again, check us out on our website. The link should be in our on Instagram in our bio, so check that out. Tom will be coming out with a couple articles, and I think Gabe and Patrick, they're going to be cooking up some articles as well. So Lux says Rockies now needs more subs on YouTube. Couldn't agree with you. But thank you again. Thank you, Lux. Thank you, Fuzzy D, for your comments and for your support tonight. We really appreciate it. But Tom, I think that will do it for tonight's podcast. Again, thank you to everyone for joining with us today and tonight. Sorry if we kept you a little bit late, but we really enjoyed tonight's podcast with you all. That will conclude this episode of the Rockies Now podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, follow, rate, and review all of our social media pages. We love hearing from all of our wonderful listeners. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the podcast. Have a great day, everyone. And as always, go Rockies.